Unfiltered. Congressman Benjamin Netanyahu, I'm sure you saw, put out a video this week saying the Biden administration, quote, has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel, which I wish were true, but isn't true, as the White House has since pointed out. But it is a Republican talking point and will only help the GOP going forward. Why does Joe Biden, why does your party continue to help, assist, defend, invite to Congress a man who seems intent on lying about your party leader, happy to humiliate Biden and the Democrats whenever he can in public, and is keen to see your candidate lose to Donald Trump in November?
Well, first of all, let me say I agree with everything you just said, other than the invitation, which of course was extended by the Republicans, Mike Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson.
But co-signed by Democrats.
Co-signed, out of tradition, but I concur. But your question is, why would we continue to support him? I'm glad you said him, by the way, because so much of this debate and deliberation, I think, is about Israel and the people of Israel and the nation of Israel, not enough about Netanyahu, who in my estimation is a disaster for Israel, for the Jewish diaspora, certainly for Gaza. And I wish we would have more conversations about him, just as we should have had more conversations about Trump. I wish the world had more conversations about Trump versus America. With all that said, he is undermining this relationship. I think he's undermining the security of Israel. I think the invitation was in poor taste and destructive. And I think his video yesterday was a summation of how he is disrespecting the United States of America. And if I were Joe Biden, I would be awfully, awfully disappointed.
Netanyahu also said in that video, quote, give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster. That doesn't sound like a man who has signed up to Joe Biden and the UN's ceasefire plan. In fact, Netanyahu keeps saying he will not end this war of his until it's reached its goals, destroying Hamas, etc. It's a non-starter for him. These are his words, to do a deal with Hamas right now. So why does the Biden administration keep, I would say, lying and saying Israel has signed up to the ceasefire plan and only Hamas hasn't? We keep seeing Blinken, Biden saying it's only Hamas, Israel's on board, and then Netanyahu keeps saying, no, we're not.
Well, I think there's truth to that, though, Mehdi. I do think Israel will be on board. First of all, this is all
will
posturing.
Be is not, hold on, he said will be. The president is saying they have. The UN resolution said Israel has accepted it.
I believe they have. I don't think they...
Even though he says, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. That doesn't sound like someone who's up for a ceasefire.
Let me just reflect on the ceasefire. It is my not just opinion, but my belief and understanding that Israel will accept that, waiting on Hamas. Now, let's be honest. First of all, I don't like equating Netanyahu with Hamas. I have grave concerns about Netanyahu. I have far more grave concerns about Hamas, but neither of these entities, the Netanyahu government nor Hamas, have an incentive to end this. Let's just be forthright. Netanyahu knows that when this ends, his political career is probably done. He might be going to prison. Hamas knows, and they've articulated, it's in their best interest to keep going. They've gotten the sympathy of the world. So when you have two parties have no incentive to end this, both have a stake in this. I do know Israel will accept the ceasefire.
Yes, you've said that about 4 times.
Well,
but the
Mehdi,
UN resolution... Hold on,
Congressman. Publicly, they will...
Congressman, but the resolution that was passed at the UN said Israel has accepted it. And Joe Biden said they have accepted it. That is not true.
I believe that to be true privately. You're saying that Netanyahu has not said it publicly.
He hasn't said it publicly.
I think
he said the opposite publicly, right?
And waiting on Hamas to do the same thing. There must be, let me just make it clear, there must be a ceasefire.
Can we agree then? Okay, let's find a common ground, because I fear we're going to argue even more as we go forward. Can we agree that as of right now, publicly, as far as we have any public evidence that I can have as a journalist, Israel, in the form of Prime Minister Benjamin, has not accepted a ceasefire deal?
Have not publicly. I believe privately they have.
So privately, Netanyahu said I have, but publicly he does videos mocking Biden.
I think that's exactly. And that is worthy of a conversation. And I want to make it clear to you, too, and everybody listening and watching. There should be a ceasefire. I've been saying this for months. Release the hostages, have a ceasefire. By the way, that goes back to October 6th. And I wish we had started more conversations right now about the future. Okay. Let's talk about resolving this once and for all. And for our generation to continue to live through this cycle of bloodshed and then pause, and bloodshed and pause is unacceptable.
Agreed. Just on Netanyahu, before we move on, the top Democrats in Congress, Schumer and Jeffries, did co-sign, you say out of tradition, an invite for him to speak. He'll be here next month. Will you be attending the Netanyahu speech in Congress next month to listen to him lie and smear your party and the president? I know you're not a fan of his. You made it very clear just a moment ago. So will you join Bernie Sanders, a Jewish Democratic member of Congress like yourself, and many other Democrats who say we are not going to go to this speech and be insulted by this guy who's being investigated for both war crimes and genocide?
My whole drive in today to be with you, I spent thinking about this issue. I've not made a decision. I'm appalled by him. I love Israel. I believe the Israel state, the nation, is a dear friend of us, and I think we share more values than people recognize. Netanyahu is a real problem. His government is despicable. I believe Tom Friedman's column in the New York Times just yesterday sums it up beautifully how I feel. I think as a member of Congress, it is my obligation. I was elected to participate. Doesn't mean I agree with people. In fact, I've seen a lot of stuff on the House floor, Mehdi, you can imagine, with which I not just disagree, I find appalling, including listening to people speak on the House floor. So I'm thinking about that right now. Okay. I am deeply opposed to his leadership. I also believe it's a responsibility to show up and listen. In the absence of hearing someone, I think that is also problematic. I also know that, let's talk politics for a second. Mike Johnson has a big win on his hands. If half the Democratic caucus decides not to show up to Netanyahu's speech, mark my words, that will be accretive to Donald Trump. So I'm weighing all these things right now. At the end of the day, I'll make a decision.
I'm not sure the American public are fans of Netanyahu. I don't think it will matter. I think they'll appreciate you people taking a principled stand.
Independent voters.
I don't think there's a big pro-Netanyahu movement amongst independent voters. But
there's a big pro-Israel movement.
So let's talk about that. What's going on? I want to talk about deaths in Gaza from all the weaponry that we have given to Netanyahu, continue to give to an ungrateful Netanyahu. The other week, we saw 4 Israeli hostages rescued from inside of Gaza by an Israeli military and police operation, returned to their families. A very good thing. President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, all reacted with praise, with celebration. None of them, in their initial responses, had a single word to say about the over 200 Palestinians reportedly killed, over 700 injured in that rescue operation, many of them innocent women and children. A lot of people have been asking this for the last 8-9 months. I'm sure you hear it in your constituency. Do Palestinian lives just not matter to the modern Democratic Party?
Oh, I think that's a horrifying statement. Let me acknowledge let me acknowledge the 38,000 human beings killed in Gaza, the 1,200 Israelis, but particularly the innocents. To me, it's all the same. They're human beings. I'm appalled and disgusted. First of all, there are Americans being held hostage. Let me change the lens for a moment. I believe, if anything, it has been the United States and the Biden administration should have been the foremost responsibility to extract our hostages, our nationals. I think there are 6 or 7 still, we don't know even if they're alive. So the question is, would we undertake an effort to extract American hostages, 2, 3, 4, 7, if we knew 200 civilians would be killed in the process?
What's the answer?
Boy, that's a tough, that's
a tough question?
That's a tough question. If you're the leader of a country, absolutely.
You killed 200 people to save 6.
Mehdi, look at first of all, I'm the son of I'm a Gold Star son. I lost my dad in Vietnam. One of the most despicable, I think, wars of the United States has ever prosecuted. We've killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people over the years. We continue to. Look at what we did in Japan to end a war. These are philosophical questions that most Americans would never want to be faced with.
But you're a member of Congress, right?
I'm a member of Congress.
You wanted to be president.
Yes.
So let me ask you the straight-up question.
Let me answer your question.
Please.
I believe, as the President of the United States, his or her obligation should always be the safety and security of Americans first. It does not mean dismissing other humanity. But in the case of hostages, when it comes to this, and we've tried this before, and we've seen carnage. The fact of the matter is, I think we should extract. And by the way, if that means there are civilian deaths as a result, unfortunately, that's, I think, a cost.
Well, the cost implies there's no other choice. We, of course, know that there was another way to get the hostages out.
I have empathy.
No, well, hold on. There's another way to get the hostages out. We got over 100 hostages out in a deal in November. You could have got Benjamin Netanyahu blocking another deal. But just I want to be very specific. In your view, is killing 274 Palestinians, including many children, an acceptable price to pay for the freeing of 4 Israelis?
Like I said, I don't. You want a clear answer, and you want to make this black and white.
Is it an acceptable price to pay?
It's an unacceptable price, but I think it's a price that has to be paid.
Wow. Okay. So how many Palestinians would it be acceptable to kill in order to get back a single hostage? What's the upper limit? Would 400?
When we start talking about human lives, every single one life is too many. And let me just, let's be human here.
But you just said that 274 is a price that has to be paid.
Because
I'm saying if it was 1,000, would you pay that?
Because in my estimation, if we look at questions like this in a vacuum, of course we're going to come up with different answers than in the context of the entire challenge of the Middle East. Because if we are increasingly seen, the United States of America in particular, as unwilling to sometimes do what's necessary to demonstrate some strength and prevent.
Congressman, you just said a moment ago we have a history of killing thousands of innocent people.
We do. And my father died in a war that was.
I do need to ask a question for the value of Palestinian life.
Yes.
So, if you're saying that to get free people from the clutches of horrible captivity, hostages, people possibly being abused in captivity, to free them, you have to pay a price, right? It's a horrible price. Does that ratio work the other way? How many Israelis can Palestinians kill in order to free Palestinian detainees who are currently being tortured in Israeli captivity, some of them being raped to death, according to the New York Times last week. Can they kill 200 Israelis? Hold on. Let me finish the question. Can they kill 200 Israelis to free 4 Palestinians who are being tortured in an Israeli prison?
I think it's a question that I'm sure Palestinians are asking the same way as Israelis.
But no. You answered it. You answered it for Israel. I would like you to answer it in reverse.
Let me just clarify something you just said. You said Palestinian prisoners are being raped to death by Israeli soldiers.
Yes, this is a report in the New York Times last week.
Okay. I don't believe that to be true. Nonetheless, the question.
A 41-year-old detainee said the interrogators made me sit on something like a hot metal stick and it felt like fire. He said another detainee died after they put the electric stick up his anus.
No, it's repulsive.
This is an Israeli dungeon that CNN and New York Times have both reported on. UN investigators. So to free people from that prison, can you kill lots of innocent people according to the logic of the raid in Gaza?
What I'm trying to say is, if you represent the Palestinian people, you represent the Israeli people, we look at this quite differently. I don't want to see...
I know you do, which is why I'm asking the question, Congressman. I understand that you see it differently. A lot of people watching at home say, why? Why aren't all lives equal?
They should be.
But they're not. Well, then let's go.
Then let's go. Look, what I don't want to do is get into a debate of who suffered worse, whose lives.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking about our lives treated equally.
Innocent Palestinian lives matter just as much as innocent Israeli lives, Muslim lives as much as Jewish and Christian lives. That's who I am. So, now, with all that said, war is hell, and this is nauseating. And we're trying to get back.
I worry about this line, war is hell, because can't Hamas say the same thing when you accuse them of war crimes? They can say war is hell.
Yes,
Isn't that why we have rules to war? So that we stop it from being hell?
Yes, they can. War is hell. And by the way, let me go back. Let me go back to Netanyahu. I've said to his face, as the ranking member of the Middle East Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs, as a Jewish man, you can imagine that. Look, you're a Muslim man. I'm a Jewish man. We represent, to some degree, when we're on public platforms, our people, our diasporas. I've said to Netanyahu's face, in Israel, in Jerusalem, in his office, what I felt, which is the settlement policy is creating dynamics that will only make Israel's security and safety at grave risk. His treatment of Palestinians, when people have nothing to protect, they act in ways that the rest of the free world would consider irrational. So this goes way back. The question is, they're both wrong. Netanyahu is wrong. Hamas is wrong. I don't want to equate the two, but the fact of the matter...
That wasn't my question, but I appreciate you making that point.
I want to make that clear.
Let's talk about Netanyahu briefly in a different context. You said war is hell. I don't like that statement. I think war has rules. People should follow the rules of war to prevent it from being hell. Right? We built an entire post-war legal architecture for that reason. America led the way.
Well, after we dropped nuclear weapons, after we firebombed Tokyo,
and then we came up with Geneva Conventions, UN Declaration, etc., Universal Declaration. You have said no one is above the law. You've said repeatedly on Twitter in relation to Donald Trump, and I agree with you. You're right. What I don't understand is why you insist on putting Benjamin Netanyahu, who you don't like, you've said that since the beginning of this interview, why you insist on putting him above international law. You were one of 42 House Democrats who voted with Republicans earlier this month to impose sanctions on the ICC chief prosecutor and other ICC officials after he announced he was seeking an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. You are a Democrat, a liberal, a supporter of the rule of law, and you're going after the International Criminal Court to protect Benjamin Netanyahu.
They went beyond their purview, Mehdi, and they did not afford, they didn't even follow their own process in this case. Look, I have some misgivings about the ICC. This was very distinct. By the way, he's not above the law. And in fact, I think everything you just shared, whether it is the prisoner who was just tortured, according to this report, war crimes by Hamas, war crimes by Israel, yes, they should be litigated. It should be transparent. It should be public. I think the way the ICC went about it was absolutely incorrect.
Why?
But do I believe, because they didn't follow their own standards, and they were beyond their purview. Of course, Israel and the U.S. not party to the ICC.
Nor is Russia.
And I think, by the way...
First of all, Palestine is party to the ICC, as you know. And Russia isn't, and we all supported the ICC arrest warrants against Putin. Biden was happy with it, said it was good.
Like I just said, it's beyond their purview. And secondly...
Why is Putin not beyond their purview, but Netanyahu is?
Well, I think the whole methodology, frankly, of the ICC right now...
I get that, but you didn't vote for sanctions on the ICC when they went after Putin, only after Netanyahu.
I understand. In this case, I do not believe that the way they did not afford Israel even the right to respond. I believe in due process. Let me put it that way. I believe in due process. The way they pursued this did not afford him that. But look, I'm not a defender of Benjamin Netanyahu.
You voted for a bill. Yeah. Okay, so this bill you voted for, most Democrats, didn't vote for this bill. It's so broad. Even if we were to agree with you that they're outside their purview, and they would say they're not, It didn't just go after ICC officials, but also, quote, the immediate family members of ICC officials. That is mob-like behavior, is it not, to go after family members?
And by the way, 95% of what we vote on in Congress has elements that we find distasteful.
But you voted for it.
Of course, that's our job
And
in
you
Congress.
stand by
We have a choice. I stand by that vote, of course.
So you stand, hold on. You
but-
stand by putting sanctions on ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan's 2 adult sons. What did they do wrong?
Mehdi, what I stand by is a vote. First of all, we have votes in Congress that we know will not end up going anywhere. We have votes that we know will probably be signed into law. They have very different consequences.
So you voted for this one because you don't think it'll be signed into law?
Well, first, no, I voted for this as a message because I do think it's a principle.
A message to ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan's 2 sons. What did they do wrong?
Now, you know that's not what my intent was. And by the way, if you look at everything...
With respect, Congressman, it doesn't matter what your intent is.
Then look,
it matters what you voted for. You voted for a very mafiosi bill, which says...
bill. No,
you don't think going after the children of a prosecutor
they're
is
not going after
Trump-like behavior?
Mehdi, they're not going after the
What does
children.
it mean to put sanctions on the children of the prosecutor?
My point is, but that's not a mafioso bill. By the way, if that is...
Picking on the family members of someone?
Mehdi,
that's the kind of thing Donald Trump does, Congressman, not Dean Phillips.
You're an educated man. You know how the Congress works. You know how bills operate.
Just because I know how it works doesn't mean I agree with it, Congressman.
But when a lot of what you agree, when the overwhelming portion of a bill you agree with, and you're forced with a yes or no, first of all, I don't vote present. I don't say I was there, I'm not taking a position. I say yes or no. And I think in this case, I registered my principle that the ICC did not conduct itself in a manner befitting of the court.
But you could have said that in a speech, in a statement, an article. You didn't need to vote for a bill which targets the family members of ICC officials.
And I'll say it to you right now, they shouldn't be targeted, the family members.
Okay, but you voted for that.
Mehdi, I vote for a lot of every single one you have on your show votes for things that we are forced
But the majority of your colleagues chose not to vote for that, even though they probably agree with you.
42 Democrats, as you said, voted for it.
Just on the issue of war crimes, which the ICC chief prosecutor is accusing Netanyahu of, and Hamas of, which the ICJ is investigating, which every major human rights group in the world is saying Israel is guilty of. How do you justify supporting the sheer devastation caused by Israel in Gaza over the past 8 months? Unprecedented, apocalyptic destruction. I just want you to have a look at the screen. We're just going to put some up here. Have a look at the screen right there. This is Gaza. That is not an anti-terror operation. That is not the targeting of Hamas.
It's horrifying.
That is a war crime. Wiping out entire neighborhoods.
Showing devastation.
Entire neighborhoods. Can you show me what you think is precise or legal in those pictures?
Well, we're looking at devastation. You know,
So how do you justify that?
What you're asking me to do is what I'm going to do, which is to say I'm appalled. I can barely watch that. No, as a father myself, to know that children died in those buildings.
And I appreciate that, but you vote for that.
I didn't vote for. That's ridiculous.
You vote for sending aid to Israel, arms to Israel.
And therefore I'm voting for...
Yes. If I put a gun in someone's hand and they shoot someone, I'm complicit in that, am I not?
If someone takes something you give them and they use it nefariously or against your own principles, that's your fault. I don't necessarily.
What if they use it to kill someone and then I give them more? Hold on. What if they use it to kill someone? I didn't know about it. Fair enough. It's not on me. I didn't know they were going to do that. But once they've killed someone, I give them a gun again and again, day after day, for them to keep killing people. That's what Congress does.
You know, Mehdi, I understand your point. What I see there is horrifying. I wish Hamas didn't do what they did on October.
I'm not disputing that you think it's horrifying. I appreciate you don't like that. You're a human being. I hope you don't like that.
Again,
I'm asking, why do you support that by sending weapons? Those buildings were destroyed by weapons you voted for.
I understand some of them, not all of them.
Yes.
I support Israel. I support human life. I support the self-determination of the Palestinian people. I support a two-state solution. I support ending this nonsense. I support freedom, of which there's very little in the Middle East.
Why not say that's horrific? I'm not going to send weapons to Israel to do that.
Because I support the country, and I believe in its defense.
But you can support the country without supporting the destruction of wholesale of Gaza cities and towns.
Then give me 30 seconds to explain. There are 15 million Jewish people in the world. My grandparents lived during the Holocaust, not that long ago, of which 2/3 were wiped out. Horrific. I've never walked in your shoes, you've never walked in mine. Let me tell you, being a Jewish person, you carry baggage, big-time baggage. Israel is the only country in the world that our diaspora believes, and I think it's fair to say, is a place of refuge if this and when this happens again. The United States did not accept Jews escaping in the very beginning. We have an affection for Israel that is unique, and I just ask people to understand. There are
you yourself said, Congressman, that doesn't make Israel secure.
That does not make Israel secure.
So why not oppose it?
I do oppose it now.
So why not say I won't vote for weapons then?
Let me explain.
Please.
So I'm telling you, we have a different, and I'm just asking you and others to understand what it's like. It's not easy. It's horrifying to see this. Israel has a lot of enemies. And it saddens me that we have to support them with this type of military support because they've got Hezbollah on their northern border, of course. You've got Hamas, you've got Iran, which sent drones. Israel is defending itself from just about every neighbor in the region.
What we watched, was that Israel defending itself? Destroying wholesale
what is
communities?
That is Israel responding, I think, disproportionately to an attack on its own people, of which 1,200 people died, which I wish you would talk a little bit more about, too, because we're going to go back to October 6th. If this is a ceasefire, we're going right back to where it was. No troops, no Israeli troops in Gaza, Hamas in control.
Okay, we're running out of time. Gaza was under siege for several years. It was under occupation. It was a horrible place.
I'm disgusted.
Good.
I love Israel. I love
I just
human
wish you would
beings.
act on your disgust and Joe Biden would act on his anger. Before we finish, let's talk about your presidential campaign this year. Why did you run for president earlier this year? Why did you primary Joe Biden? And I have to ask, this is not a ding, was it a humiliating experience for you?
Not at all.
Because you are a Minnesota congressman and you came not second behind Joe Biden in Minnesota. You came third behind Uncommitted. And in Michigan, you came fourth behind Marianne Williamson after she had suspended her campaign. What was the point of going through that experience of humiliating yourself?
It's the point of protest. It's the point of being an American. It is the point of demonstrating that we live in a country of competition, not coronations. It's a point of not letting two parties, in this case my party, act, in my estimation, completely against the interests of its own people and citizens and country. And I'm appalled by this duopoly. And somebody had to show some courage and stand up to it. I'm so glad. Not only was it not humiliating, it was the most gratifying, beautiful experience. It restored my faith in Americans and further reduced my faith in this two-party system. By the way, the reason I did it, I spent a year, Mehdi, trying to encourage others to run because Joe Biden is a good man, but he's not going to win, I don't believe. And I am disgusted by how much support is now being accrued to Trump. Someone had to stand up. Someone had to demonstrate that you can compete. And even if it's a fool's errand, my goodness. My goodness. That's what, and by the way, protests, which I know.
No, I appreciate that. It was a bold move on your part. There's no doubt about that.
And I loved every minute of it.
And I should point out to our viewers that you are now retiring from Congress. You're standing out in November. Democrats and anyone who cares about America, in my view, finally got some good news the other week when Trump was convicted on all 34 counts of falsifying business records to try and cover up campaign finance violations. You tweeted, I want to put up the tweet, you tweeted the following day, quote, Donald Trump is a serial liar, cheater and philanderer, a 6-time declarer of corporate bankruptcy, an instigator of insurrection, a convicted felon who thrives on portraying himself as a victim. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York should pardon him for the good of the country. When I read that, Congressman, I felt like I was reading a headline from The Onion. You can't be serious, can you? No one is above the law, but Donald Trump should be pardoned.
That was very much a tweet of principle and pragmatism. Donald Trump, in the estimation of a majority of Americans, is being pursued by our legal system, and I don't believe that to be true. I don't believe it to be true. You probably don't.
But the polls don't show that.
But the fact of the matter is, a huge swath, a majority of this country believes that's to be the case. And if we lose the rule of law, if we lose faith in the systems and the institutions of governance and democracy here in America, I believe we are in for very, very difficult times.
So here, Congressman, a lot of people like me lose faith in the system because they can't hold Trump to account.
And let me just say this. The Georgia case, I was trapped in the House chamber on January 6th. I was, as everyone watched on TV, we were trapped in the chamber. We experienced the worst day in history. The Georgia case, totally different, by the way. He is responsible for instigating that. Hundreds of people who he inspired to go there are rotting in jails, and he's walking free. That's different. This case, Mehdi, I find it to be, frankly, distasteful. I think the only reason he was prosecuted is because his name was Trump. I think it was wrong. I think the case that should have been focused on is the Georgia case.
I understand that you think it's distasteful.
And let me just get to the
politics. But why does he get a get out?
Let me get to the politics.
Okay, please.
Joe Biden is likely going to lose anyway. I think, ironically, this makes it even more likely, and I believe by
The polls show the reverse, by the way. Can I just point out, Reuters poll, 10% of Republican registered voters say they're less likely to vote for Donald Trump after his felony conviction. New York Times poll showed that Trump's lead over Biden went down by 1 point after his conviction. So that's not necessarily true.
No, look at the battleground states. Look at the movement even since that decision. And I'm giving you my look. This is an opinion. I don't have a magic wand, but I believe, based on what I'm hearing and seeing. By the way, I represent a district that had not elected a Democrat since 1958, a very swingy district that has moved left, no question.
And you're hearing people saying, I'm going to vote for Trump because he was convicted?
No, not because. And by the way, the polls you're referencing are likelihood of change, and also they're national. Look at the battleground polls. Biden is slipping. Trump is actually rising. He is peeling away core Democratic constituencies for reasons that we've just discussed and others. My whole point is this. more than 50% of this country, I think, want to see Donald Trump being president, not me among them. But when you use the legal system to prosecute him, to prevent him from running, I think the consequences are even worse. And that's why
even if I were to agree with you on the polls, which I don't, but let's say I did, even then I would say, who cares? The rule of law is more important. You can't just do things for polling or political reasons. He was prosecuted by a jury of his peers, 12 jurors, convicted, for crimes, by the way, that Alvin Bragg, the DA, has prosecuted many other people for, 34 different people in the first 15 months. So why should Donald Trump get any special treatment? One last question.
I can tell you why. Because if you commute his sentence, he's still a convict. He's still a felon. The whole country knows it. And
well, he gets special treatment for the last name.
You've reduced the likelihood of, I think, of some significant civil unrest. And by the way, at the end of the day,
I think civil unrest is coming regardless. And on that note, one last question for you. What does it say about the campaign you ran, the issues you stand for, that your biggest donor, supporter, finance guy Bill Ackman, who pledged $1 million to you, is now reportedly thinking of endorsing Donald Trump? He's going from you to Trump.
No, I'm disappointed. By the way, he did not. He supported a political action committee, which, by the way, that's how this. Well, let's talk about that. Money in politics, repulsive. It doesn't just buy votes; it buys access and it buys influence. There's no question. But when you single out one person's contribution to a campaign, that whole notion that somehow changes your principles, that's just not true. Am I disappointed? And is he one of probably hundreds of people that I'm really surprised by who are seemingly inching towards supporting Donald Trump? That's the anecdotal evidence that everybody listening should know is happening. It's real. People who you're going to be surprised by are going to vote for him across categories. And that's just the truth. And and by the way, a lot of people who supported me also are now supporting Kennedy, right? A more overwhelming majority supporting Biden. But the whole point of this is the problem. We started with this, the duopoly. People are being disenfranchised, clearly
I'm with you.
Angry, and there's a lack of competition, and we're making this country, I think, putting it in a position of grave consequences if we don't promote competition and allow people to compete for representation.
The duopoly is bad. I think we can end on a point of agreement after lots of disagreement.
I think you and I agree on a lot more.
And I'm not surprised that Bill Ackman is supporting Trump. He's exactly the kind of person who would support Trump. Congressman Dean Phillips, appreciate you taking time out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.